Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about a very important visit of Mr. Ustad Muhammad Kareem Khalili, the chairman Hizb-e Wahadat Islami Afghanistan, and he was also the former chairman of Afghan High Peace Council. He met the Chief of Army Staff today, the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, and also the Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Khan. And interestingly, they talked about the stories regarding to the mutual interest. They also talked about the ongoing situation in Afghanistan, especially regarding the law and order. So today, the Prime Minister said there is no military solution to the Afghan conflict and a negotiated political settlement is the only way forward. Now, Prime Minister has been saying this for a very long time. And he's always emphasized that war is not a solution, it's a problem itself. Whereas the Chief of Army Staff says that peace in Afghanistan means peace in Pakistan. A stable and prosperous Afghanistan at peace with itself and its neighbors is in Pakistan's national interest. Now, this was stated by the Chief of Army Staff, General Qamar Javed Bajwa, during the meeting with Mr. Khalili. The Foreign Minister further added that the Afghan leadership should seize this historic opportunity to establish lasting peace in Afghanistan through intra-Afghan negotiations. He further added that Pakistan's call on all sides to take measures for reduction in violence leading to ceasefire. Ceasefire is the utmost priority of Pakistan and Afghanistan also. Now, talking about another very important aspect, and that is about the story regarding a interim government in Afghanistan. Ross Wilson, the U.S. Charge d'Affaires in Kabul, says we have not advocated, and the USA is not advocating an interim government. The outcomes of Afghanistan peace negotiations are up to Afghans, and we believe those outcomes should reflect the wishes and aspirations of the Afghan people, stated by Mr. Ross Wilson, who is the Charge d'Affaires in Kabul. Now, interestingly, since we have done so many programs on this particular issue regarding the peace in Afghanistan, situations are not that great. Everybody is talking about bringing in peace in the region. Everybody wants to talk about ceasefire by the Taliban and sort of push forward for the negotiations. Now, negotiations since Doha, I think they have done a brilliant job, the Qatari government, and a lot has been done, but a lot still needs to be done. To talk about that, let me introduce you to our panels. We have with us in our studio Dr. Talat Shabir Saab. He is an expert on South Asia. Thank you very much, Dr. Talat Saab, for your time. And we'll also be joined in by Dr. Hussain Shahid Suhrawardi Saab, expert on foreign affairs and Afghanistan. Thank you very much, Hussain Saab, for your time as well. And we'll also be talking to Hassan Khan Saab on the telephone. He's an expert on Afghan affairs and a senior anchor person as well. And now, coming to you, Dr. Talat Shabir, first of all, sir, I was just going through the overall, fault lines of Afghanistan, ethnic, you talk about religious. Now, interestingly, 99.7% of the population living in Afghanistan, they're Muslims. 12 to 13% are those of, they're Shias. Yes. The rest are Sunnis, and then there's a small portion of Sikhs as well as other religions as well, even Hindus. Now, my first point to you is that since this man is primarily somebody who is the head of the Hazara community, and the recent incident that took place in Quetta, in Mach also, and other than that, if you remember, a lot has been going on, and that particular community, I think, has sacrificed a lot. Now, this particular visit of Mr. Khalili to Pakistan in that particular capacity, and he's been the head of the council, and now in this particular capacity when he visits Pakistan, how significant is that?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think it's very significant visit of Mr. Khalili that he visits when this Quetta incident happened in our country. In fact, when we talk of this visit, we talk of this visit from the perspective of a one peace process, because we know there are a number of factions, there are a number of stakeholders in Afghan peace, and Hazara community is one of the very important stakeholders in Afghanistan. Now, the more important thing is that it actually shows how Pakistan is actually looking at Afghan peace process. Like when we say we want to reach a common understanding, we say that we want peace that is actually negotiated with every faction of Afghani people. We actually want to deepen relationship with because there's some kind of misunderstanding, you can say, or a communication gap between Pakistan and Afghanistan over the last couple of years. So there's a kind of signaling that we need to do. This Khalili Saab, since he spoke to our institute today in the morning, and he was very pragmatic about peace, and he in fact said that peace in Afghanistan means peace in the region. Peace in Afghanistan means that peaceful neighbors. Peace in Afghanistan means that you will have, it is going to have some kind of social impact on the countries in the periphery of Afghanistan. So they're very important signaling. So a very sad incident of Quetta, and he in fact represents Hazara community in Afghanistan, and is a very knowledgeable and a very respected religious scholar and leader that he is. I think this was very important, and it shows on part of Pakistan that Pakistan wishes to engage with all factions. So I think in the past we suffered because we actually had choices over who to talk to, and now I think we need a broad-based consensus on peace process. We need a broad-based engagement with the leaders of various factions. We actually want peace, which is a common which represents common aspiration of Afghani people. So I think that's a very good development, and Pakistan engaging with various kinds of leaders in Afghanistan is a very welcome step. One. Second, you have in your intro you have shown various statements by Ali. This also in fact shows how important Afghan peace is for Pakistan. Like Prime Minister is also gives a statement that
Chief
peace
of
in
Army Staff,
Afghanistan,
the Foreign
Chief of Army
Minister,
Staff. No, this is a strategic signaling that we have, strategic gesturing we have shown. And the mere fact that Khalili Saab has also called on Chief of Army Staff, there are some kind of problems at the borders that we need to address. There are some kind of problems that both militaries need to understand and resolve, and there are some problems that political leadership needs to understand. And there's also another very important aspect of this visit and this engagement is that people-to-people engagement is very important. And I think there's a realization, because we have now seen series of high-level visits, like we had Ashraf Ghani Saab coming here, we had Abdullah Saab coming here, we had Gulbuddin Hikmatyar coming here.
Yeah.
So there's a series of dignitaries visiting from Afghanistan. This shows that people on, I think, both sides of the fence have now realization that ultimately there has to be peace in Afghanistan, and peace in Afghanistan means peace in...
How important this individual is for sort of, creating a balance as far as Iran is concerned and Pakistan is concerned in Afghanistan, though we have very categorically mentioned that we have no favorites. It should be Afghan-led, Afghan-owned.
I think this is very important. Even if we say that we do not have favorites, of course, when you engage with people, you get to have some favorites, you get to have some friends, and you develop stakeholders. So it's I think engaging with such community and engaging with the leaders of marginalized communities in Afghanistan is a very good signal that across the board we want to engage with everyone in Afghanistan. And if we actually point out favorites, then that actually creates problem in negotiating various things, because why I say peace in Afghanistan is a very complex issue, because there are number of stakeholders that have very strong positions over their issues, very strong position over how the peace process should move forward and how they should advance their interests. So I think this is going to create a kind of balanced approach, and as we have a very serious foreign policy challenge also, creating a kind of balance between Iran and Saudi Arabia and such kind. I think this will help us achieve some kind of balance in creating that relationship.
Now coming to you, Hussain Sarwardi Saab. First of all, sir, since our friend Dr. Talab just mentioned that recently there have been so many visits of the high-ups, whether you talk about Abdullah or you talk about the visit of our own Prime Minister to Afghanistan, and other than that, you talk about Hikmatyar or Khalili Saab, and for that matter, I mean the major, I would say, the decision makers. Now, there was this another sort of a rumor that there is a possibility of an interim government in Afghanistan, because currently, recently there was this election held, and again the same problem was witnessed between Abdullah and Ashraf Ghani, and eventually now he is the president, the other one has been given another post. In these circumstances, sir, the role of a senior Shia leader, and you're talking about 12 to 13% of the population out there, they're Shias. And unfortunately, now we're talking about, having something where all these stakeholders should feel comfortable. Everybody should be happy with their own piece of pie. Will that be possible, sir? Are we heading towards that? Is that what exact solution is for Afghanistan when it comes to peace and prosperity?
Afghanistan is a very fragmented society, especially after 1979. This fragmentation in society has been very sharply compartmentalized and divided. Therefore, whether we accept it or not, our people may people may deny with this fact, or they may get annoyed with this fact. The truth is that Afghanistan is a society with fragmentation. They are very sharply divided into ethnic groups as well as sectarian groups. In the circumstances, whatever the solution is proposed in Doha, one thing is a fact, and that you have asked even in your question, and I'm answering it, taking cue from your question, that if national government is formed, all these factions will be accommodated, because all these factions are ultimately going to represent a national government. So if that is the case, Pakistan, which was very badly maligned in the past by these factions, these ethnic groups, as well as Pakistan's wrong policies in the past interfering in the internal affairs of Afghanistan, Pakistan right now, what is doing is to repair the damage. Pakistan is having all these stakeholders, different groups, to come over to Islamabad, and Pakistan is clearing the things. Let me say this, Faisal, to you right now, that the time when we are speaking with each other, in the last 15 to 20 years, Kabul regime as well as Afghans, they had not trusted Pakistan that much as they are doing right now. And the reason is that Pakistan is directly communicating, directly associating itself with these groups, telling them that Afghan-led peace process, Afghan initiated peace process is acceptable to us, and everything should be done by themselves. Now, calling these groups, like as you stated, Hikmat Yar, Dr. Abdullah are right now, Karim Khalili, they are here and they are given this message very carefully that we are with every solution of Afghan problem, what that is proposed, initiated and led by Afghans. So if this much thing at such a top level is given, this kind of an impression is given to them, of course Afghanistan will become very friendly, very docile. Now, when you say this thing that in future, if any such government is going to take place in Afghanistan, it will be wonderful that they will have a very good picture of Pakistan, because every leader of these factions, every leader of all these ethnic groups have heard that right there in Islamabad as well as in Rawalpindi, that Pakistan right now is not supporting any faction. They are not having any of their good guys and the bad guys. Pakistan is right now just an outsider, stating that whatever is acceptable to Afghans, that is acceptable to us. Can I comment on this Khalili's visit a bit more, if you permit me?
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay, so Khalili's visit right now is very strategic. Remember that this is once again important, that his visit to Islamabad and Rawalpindi has given a very clear-cut impression that government of Pakistan and Hazara community across the border is on the same page. One thing. Second thing, this visit, in fact, if Pakistan has induced this visit, or it was already there in the pipeline, this is somehow, I believe that it's to kill two birds with one stone. One is that the PDM had exploited Hazara community sit in Quetta, and that they showed that probably Hazara community is against the present government or against the establishment. The visit of Khalili to Islamabad as well as Pindi shows that it is not the case. because they are there and they are supporting each other. Second thing is that there are bad guys across the border who may exploit this situation, as was the case with PTM. So this visit has nipped the evil right from the bud, because the head of this faction, the head of this community, he was there, and once he was there, he has already, in other words, they both have, which means that Hazara community across the border as well as government of Pakistan has given a very strong shut up call to those elements across the border who may or might have exploited the situation, preparing some kind of some kind of another situation or a scene for the people right there in Quetta or in general in Balochistan.
All right. Now, we have also been joined in by Hassan Khan Saab, senior anchor person, senior journalist, an expert on the Afghan affairs. Hassan Saab, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, Faisal.
Hassan, thank you very much for taking out the time and talking to PTV World. Now, tell us one thing. Hassan, you have been to Afghanistan so many times and you've met the senior leadership as well. Now, there seems to be a disconnect and there was this trust deficit. You know, when even if you go in the history, I mean, this is decades old. I mean, talking about the killings of the Iranian council members in Afghanistan and Kabul, and they, blamed Pakistan indirectly, and that was the turning point between the relationship between the neighboring countries of Pakistan and Iran. But now, having said that, the visits of the Sunni leaders, visits of the Shia leaders, visits of their president, our prime minister visiting Afghanistan, you're talking about bilateral trade, you're talking about intra-Afghan trade. I think Pakistan is doing all what is in their given capacity. Do you think those old wounds, they are healing now?
Faisal, thank you very much. I think, no doubt, lots of water has flown under the bridge since the incidents which you are talking about. And yes, a lot of that trust deficit has been bridged for the last several months, and I think years, when Pakistan get engaged in negotiating the Taliban, between the Taliban and the U.S. administration for almost 2 years. And now Pakistan is playing a very pivotal role in the intra-Afghan talks, the Afghan-Afghan talks. And Pakistan has, I think, a paradigm shift in its Afghan policy. Yes, historically, there was a trust deficit, and the trust deficit was not only due to the mistrust of Afghan over Islamabad, but Islamabad mistrust over Kabul. And unfortunately, the region was engaged in a dirty war, and these dirty wars spread over decades. So definitely Afghan were suffered and Pakistan suffered, and it was unfortunate that the mistrust existed between the two, who suffered a lot due to the Afghan conflict. But now I think, due to the fatigue of the international community, there is a lot of interest of the international community, and specifically the regional countries, who want to get rid of this Afghan imbroglio. And in the region, we have to, I think, give credit to the roles played by the Chinese and the Russians, and Pakistan is on the front. And this, what we call it, 3+1, the countries like the US, China, and Russia, and then Pakistan is the plus. Iran has so far not joined that club. And I think they are playing a very important role, because Chinese are interested in a peaceful region. Otherwise, their one belt, one road initiative, I think it will be incomplete. Russia is, I think, definitely engaged. And once this Zalmay Khalilzad project gets started, Russians are now on a back foot for a time being. So I think now the role being played by Pakistan, the international community is recognizing that, not only recognizing, but a number of times they have appreciated the Pakistani role. The Afghan diaspora, especially their leadership, different leadership, whether it was the community like the political leadership, or their jihadi leaders, or their ethnic leaders, as you mentioned about the Hazaras, or the Tajik, or the Pashtun, etc. They are recognizing it, and they are, I think, readily accepting the invitation coming from Islamabad, and they are visiting Islamabad. So now Pakistan, as I said, Pakistan's prime interest is to get a peaceful Afghanistan, because without a peaceful Afghanistan, Pakistan cannot achieve peace on its own land. And the Afghans also realize that without Pakistan, that they cannot make a tango. So they are also extending their hand. But there is, if we say that the trust deficit has zeroed down, I think that will be a bit too much. We are talking,
But Hassan, the point which I was making, I mean, when you hear our chief of army staff talking to Mr. Khalili and saying that peace in Afghanistan means peace in Pakistan, and a stable and a prosperous Afghanistan at peace with itself. Peace with itself, sorting out the internal issues, and its neighbors is Pakistan's national interest. So there are two areas which have been mentioned. One, the effort of Pakistan, and the second is the effort within these entities or these political groups or these warlords, so that they can have that kind of environment out there where peace would prevail, and eventually it is going to stay like that. Unfortunately, in the past, there were so many stakeholders, there was this confusion. But now it seems that things have been very clear, and the way the Afghan, I would say a lot of government members and a lot of senior political leadership also used to blame Pakistan for whatever is happening inside Afghanistan, because this was the kind of mindset which was prepared by the Indians, interestingly. Now, do you think that has diluted to a certain extent? This is what exactly I meant. I'm not saying that things would just change overnight, but this particular concept that Pakistan really wants peace, because peace in Afghanistan eventually means peace in Pakistan. Do you think the Afghan people, the majority, they do understand this now?
I think this is a very, I think it's a very positive narrative which Pakistan is, I think, sending out to the world, that peace in Afghanistan mean peace in Pakistan. And I think that it's true, because for the last 40 years when Afghan conflict is going on, it is Pakistan which suffered the most from every aspect. We lost our flora and fauna due to the Afghan and the refugees, millions of refugees. We lost, I think, even the culture. We lost our this Kalashnikov culture, the heroin culture, etc. So I think Pakistan, no doubt, what is happening, Pakistan has a direct impact, and Pakistan is a direct sufferer of that. But I think you definitely mentioned India, which has created a lot of mistrust for Pakistan. Not only India, I think other countries. India was leading that, and other countries who were facing failures on the Afghan front. So Pakistan was an easy. I think it was a sandbag.
Pakistan was the scapegoat, basically, yeah.
Yeah. So, but you mentioned about that the statement of the Pakistan Army Chief General Bajwa. No doubt, Afghan have to be at peace within. But unfortunately, as I mentioned in my earlier statement, that Afghans are in I think in a state of dirty war. A lot of proxies. Different countries have different proxies in Afghanistan. There's a lot of killings, a lot of, I think, like the jihadis, the communists, the Taliban, etc., then ethnic dimension, then sectarian dimension, etc. So I think I'm not of that mind, which is putting this pressure on the Afghans. I don't believe that Afghan leadership have that capacity, or they have that internal, what we call it, resilience to solve such a big issue, which is spread over almost 40 years, 4 decades. So definitely they need a foreign hands. They definitely need a foreign assistance. As look at, I think they are demonstrating their willingness for peace, because they are engaged. The Afghans are engaged for the last more than a month, 2 months. They are engaged in Doha, and they are talking. So it is a big achievement that they are still talking to each other. But without, if we left this whole process to the Afghan, I think that will be too much we are wanting from Afghanistan. We have to be engaged. Pakistan need to be engaged through its soft, I think, not using hard power, but using soft power. The U.S.
Correct.
definitely need to be engaged, the regional powers, particularly Chinese and the Russians. And I'm not shy to say, even if we get India into this process, I think, because we need a peaceful Afghanistan. So if
We need
if
a
we can
peaceful
get a peaceful
Afghanistan, sir, but
Afghanistan,
once we all know that Indians have played a very negative role and they are the spoilers,
they
not
are
once,
still
twice,
playing it.
every
They
time.
are still.
How
They
can we
are
trust
still.
them?
they are still. I'm pretty sure that India is still trying to keep Afghanistan destabilized for the reason they can sandwich Pakistan in a much easier way, destabilizing its western region, its western border. But my point is that if the international community, particularly the superpowers like US, like Chinese, like Russians, like the 29 member NATO countries who are now in Afghanistan, I think if we get engaged all these and let's make them in, set them on the table, and once this Afghan, because a peaceful Afghanistan, after Afghanistan, it is Pakistan which can benefit the most. So my point is that if we can convince the international community to play a positive role, any person who can play a
All right.
positive role in making Afghanistan peaceful, that will be a big achievement for Pakistan.
All right. Now, Dr. Talat, since you met Mr. Khalili today, did you discuss regarding the killings of Hazara and the dirty Indian role and the way the Indians are using the Afghan soil against Pakistan and the presence of Daesh, which is an anti-Shia, I would say, group killing people left, right, and center? Forget about what they did in Middle East, what they have done in Afghanistan, and now they've started doing that in Pakistan. Did you discuss about this issue?
I think it was not particularly discussed. This was a public talk by.
But was he
Mr.
well
Khalil.
aware of this fact?
Yes. I think
I'm sure the foreign minister, the chief of army staff, must have briefed him
Yes.
about this.
My sense is that like we conducted all the leaders that came here, less Gulbuddin Hikmatyar, all of them we had in our institute visiting us and for a public talk. Now, in my assessment, there's a perception in the leadership of Afghanistan that we need to revisit on what we've been doing. Like as Dr. Hussain mentioned, that there were certain things that Pakistan was doing wrong in the past, and now we are making corrections. We are correcting a course, a kind of course correction is taking place. So Afghan leadership, I think they have now realized that they don't have to play fully in the hands of some other country and spoil. As I always say, the way we want peace in Afghanistan, we are advancing peace in Afghanistan. There are people who are spoiling peace in Afghanistan, because having peace in Afghanistan is in the interest of Pakistan, whereas spoiling peace in Afghanistan is in the interest of maybe, as you say, India. India has done a lot of investment in Afghanistan, and they are doing it since 9/11, and they are continuously doing that investment. They are actually engaging youth, they are giving scholarships, they are engaging with youth, and they are trying to place certain people who are Indian educated in very important portfolios in Afghanistan. Primarily, not that they are taking care of their interests, but since they have been educated in India, they are kind of their investment in Afghanistan, and that cadre that they have in Afghanistan still speaks of India as something that is very helpful to in Afghanistan, and they have a lot of development cause and blah blah. The leadership in Afghanistan realizes that Indian presence in Afghanistan is, of course, not in the interest of Pakistan, and we don't like that. And since India actually uses that as a platform to do nefarious activities inside Pakistan, so and they realize that it is against Pakistan's interest to have a lot of Indian presence on Afghan soil. So leadership in Afghanistan now fully realizes that presence of India and Indian involvement in Afghanistan is counterproductive for peace process. This is done. As Honorable Hassan Khan
Do you believe the major leadership of Afghanistan, whichever factor they're from, whether from the government or the opposition, Taliban or the military, intelligence or otherwise, I mean, forget about NDS, they have a different agenda.
Yes.
But generally, do they understand that the dirty role of Indians
India
is what is the real cause of problem in Afghanistan?
Maybe they actually since they have also problem at diplomatic level, and maybe because of pressures that they have, and since there's a lot of involvement of India in Afghanistan, and plus there's American influence inside Afghanistan. A lot of things done by Americans in Afghanistan are supportive of what India is doing there. So I think, in my assessment, the leadership across the board has this realization, but certainly they have certain international relations considerations, as impediment. There are certain regional considerations that are impediment for, maybe saying it openly. But they realize that mess in Afghanistan is not only because of our wrong policies in the past, but because of, and particularly post 9/11 era, Indian has been very, very forthcoming and very, aggressively doing activities in Afghanistan, which not only spoiled peace in Afghanistan, but has also created problems in part of our country, in Balochistan, as well as in KP. So, and that is why when I hear people, leaders from Afghanistan talking of peace, and peace in the neighbors, and the way Army Chief says peace in Afghanistan is peace in Pakistan, though these are not the exact word of the leadership from Afghanistan, but I think they believe peace in Pakistan is also peace in Afghanistan. This is vice versa. So there is a realization, and I think we need to build on this thesis, that we need to take care of each other. We need to take care of each other's interests that we pursue in our countries, and we need to build on what we have achieved so far. Now coming over to the peace process, that I call it very complex issue. This peace process,
I think it's the most complex issue on planet. Yeah,
it's a very complex. It's not, it's very far away from where we are talking from. But I think if we can take direction, so we may take time, but I think we will reach towards. But peace in
talks
that
of 40,
part of
45 years old conflicts, constant conflicts.
Yes.
Can't be sorted out in a year's time, I would say.
And there are so many stakeholders inside Afghanistan. Like I was just reading some literature on just Taliban factions. Now, there's a perception in the negotiators from the West, those who are involved in Doha talks, and they are having, they say, the people, the Taliban who are actually controlling the field commanders, they have different perception of peace.
As the ones who are taking the decisions
negotiators
at
have
top.
different perception of peace. No, this is something very strange. Like if you negotiate peace in Doha or Islamabad or Kabul, so peace has to actually take place
on ground.
So how will that happen? So there's a lot to do, before.
So what you're saying is that there are differences within the ranks of all those who are the decision makers?
Yes.
Or let me take the same point to Hussain Surwardi, sir.
Yes.
Hussain Sahab, now our friend Dr. Shabir says that interestingly, the ones who are taking the decisions or are the major stakeholders when it comes to talks or negotiations, they have a different perception of peace, whereas the ground commanders, they have a different concept altogether. Now, looking at these two, I mean, do you think they can converge somewhere, or there would be differences within their thinking, within the practical approach, sir?
It's a very important question. At the same time, it's very alarming. I believe an investigation may take place into this question. The reason is that the ground commanders, if they are slipping away from the central command, all those factions that are right now negotiating in Doha, if ground commanders are negating them, that would be really a disaster with this entire episode. But I have a different observation. Well, let me first of all say this thing, that I second Dr. Shabir, that had these negotiations taken place right there in Kabul, things would have been completely different, because then ground commanders would have also been involved. But a good office is provided by Qatar, and Doha has been there, and therefore all of them are there. The different perception that I just mentioned is that I believe central commanders, they had ample amount of time to take all these ground commanders, ground forces into confidence for what they were proceeding on with. For example, Afghan Taliban, they had negotiated a lot amongst themselves in all ranks and files, not only there inside Afghanistan, but even that leadership which was not there in Afghanistan, even they were taken on board, so that it may go very coherent process. They may go with the strength, with the robust attitude, and therefore they have gone there. So I think that right now those elements which are there in Doha, for negotiations. They have full confidence of the ground forces, our ground commanders. But those who are there in Afghanistan and have been neglected, and one of them is Gulbuddin Hikmatyar. He is the one who is complaining a lot, and he has threatened numerous times that civil war is not coming to an end. He will become pain in the neck even if Doha process succeeds.
Now, another important area, and that is about the withdrawal of the US troops. Hussain Saab, halting the drawdown could jeopardize the US-backed Afghan peace process, correct?
Sorry, once again?
Yeah, Surwardi Saab?
Faisal?
Yeah, okay. I'll repeat. I'm saying that halting the drawdown could jeopardize this US-backed peace process. I mean, what's the way forward now? Withdrawing the troops, keeping a certain number, increasing the number, because there seems to be an absolute confusion. Even in America, God knows what's going on, what's brewing in Trump's mind, what's going on in the mind of Joe Biden. What would be the eventually, the outcome?
Faisal, two pressure points are there which will definitely lead to withdrawal of American forces from Afghanistan. One is that an international treaty has taken place between the United States and the Taliban, as per which they have to withdraw, and they have to withdraw. One. Second very important thing, Joe Biden, the forthcoming President of United States, remained Vice President of Obama for 8 long
Correct.
years. And Obama's policy was to withdraw as many forces from Afghanistan as possible. And to a very greater extent, he had done till 2014. Now, when he will come over, I believe with this patch of 2014 to 2016 to 2020, with this president, he is going to implement same policies that he had applied when he was second to Obama, or lieutenant of Obama. So I think that would be a continuation, which means that Joe Biden's first priority will be to withdraw forces from Afghanistan, number one. And number two, he would also be having a pressure, and that is of a Doha peace agreement between Taliban and United States, as per which Americans have to withdraw forces from Afghanistan, so that Taliban's one very major demand is fulfilled, and their demand was foreign forces must leave the land so that they may sign a peace agreement. And see, the second part is the continuation of the first part. If first part is not fulfilled by United States, which means not withdrawing American forces, second part will be ruined, because Taliban will withdraw. They will say that they have been betrayed. So last February, what had happened? This February, they consider that by this February, probably they will finish the second stage of this whole peace process. First, between the Taliban and United States. Second, between the Taliban and all other groups, all factions, for going for a national unity government for peace and stability in Afghanistan.
All right, now Hassan Khan Sahab, two factors. One is the attacks by the Taliban on the Afghan forces, for that matter, just to build up some sort of pressure so that the negotiations could take place from a position of strength, number one. The second is that the American troops, I mean, this is exactly what the Taliban want. They want them to leave and vacate. I mean, are they going to keep a certain number? What would be the consequences of that regarding the peace and law or ceasefire, for that matter? Or for that matter, if they withdraw 100%, don't you think that is going to bring Afghanistan at a brink of another civil war kind of a situation?
No, Faisal, I think no doubt this Afghan scene is really a very complex scene. You can say anything, and you can, I think one can predict that either the conflict can go off, either the conflict can be resolved. So I think it depends on prediction. But one thing is clear. Look, since 2018, the talks process is going on, and I think this is the first time in Afghan history, in the history of this Afghan conflict, that Afghans are talking to each other, and the major parties involved in the conflict, like the U.S. government and the Taliban, they reached an agreement, and so far the agreement is intact. And as for my worthy friends who talked about the the differences between those who are negotiating at Doha and the one who are the field commander. And I think they have demonstrated, the field commander demonstrated the decision of their leadership when they stopped attacking the U.S. militaries since February 2019, when the agreement was signed between Taliban and the U.S. government. Not a single attack happened on the U.S. forces or on the U.S. interest in Afghanistan. So it means that the ground forces are following the Taliban foot soldiers are following what decision their leadership has taken. Even when they announced a ceasefire for 3 times, and when the agreement was being signed on February 29, you know, a 10-day ceasefire was observed just to demonstrate whether Taliban can do it or not. So they have successfully done that ceasefire for 10 days, and at the end of that, the 10 days, the agreement was signed. So personally, I'm optimistic because yes, we are getting closer to May 2021, when all the U.S. troops will be withdrawn as per agreement from from Afghanistan. And this U.S. withdrawal, the withdrawal of the U.S. troop by May 2021 is not conditioned to the progress in the peace negotiation, intra-Afghan peace negotiation. So I think definitely so far I see the Afghan forces, they are doing their job well. They are keeping the Taliban away from the city centers, from the main major population areas, because hardly currently there are 2,500 American troops and almost 5,000 NATO troops. So I think the 8,000 around troops, international troops, I think they are no match to the era when there were 120,000 international troops in Afghanistan. So I think the Afghan troops are capable, the Afghan military is capable now to handle the situation. What they need is, I think, supervision, guidance, or we call it training, or the financial support, or the material support from the international community. And definitely the international community will keep that on. So I'm pretty sure that American will not change the goalpost, or if they change it, so definitely they will go for a consultation where they will get involved the Chinese, the Russians. They may involve, I think, the Chinese, the Russian, and the Pakistani, to, in consultation with the Taliban, they can change the date for the complete withdrawal from Afghanistan. Otherwise, I think what Pakistan's position is, Pakistan demands, including the Russia and the Chinese, they demand responsible withdrawal from Afghanistan. So responsible withdrawal means that Afghanistan may not fall again into another internal conflict or chaos. So that is the Pakistan position. That is the position of the regional countries. And I believe, and I believe Taliban will also agree to this.
All right, Hasan Khan Saab, thank you very much, sir, for your presence, for your comments, and for your input. Sarwardi Saab, was a pleasure having you. Dr. Saab, thank you so much for your presence as well. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you tomorrow at 8. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.